Hey everyone, welcome back to Old Guy REI. Today I'm going to be discussing the last two properties we added to our portfolio, and over the last few videos I've talked about the first three purchases. These last two were single family homes. One was a turnkey property purchased through a turnkey provider in Gary, Indiana, and the second property was found on the MLS in St. Louis, Missouri. And I'll start with the Gary property, and we ended up going to Gary on the coattails of a fellow investor who's been investing there for 5 or 6 years now and doing quite well. And he started there also behind someone else that had been doing quite well years before him. So I thought it would be a good market to test. We ended up picking a 3-bedroom, 1-bath home, like I said, through a turnkey provider, and the purchase price was $120,000. We were all in for $34,000. We put 25% down, and when I calculate our cash on cash return after deducting the PI, which is the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and expenses, it leaves us a positive cash flow of $150 a month. When I calculate the cash on cash return on those numbers, we end up with a 5.6% cash on cash return. This is where I need your comments and thoughts on whether I'm calculating this correctly or not. Since we already have reserves on this property, I believe I should add back in the $179 we would be setting aside for expenses, which is 15% of the gross rents. The property rents for $11.95 a month, and if I add in the expense money, which is $179 a month, to the $150 that we were positive, it gives us a total of $329. When we calculate the cash on cash return at that number, $329 times 12 divided by the $34,000 that we put in, we end up with a cash on cash return a little over 11%, which to me is a pretty good number. The other property that we purchased, we ended up paying cash for it because once we put an offer in, they got another offer, and we were just thinking if we offered cash, we had a better chance of getting the deal. And I liked the deal from the start. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath in St. Louis, Missouri. It was for sale for $65,000. We ended up all in at $70,000. It had a Section 8 tenant already in place that wanted to stay, and they were paying $11.50 per month. So when I calculate our cash on cash return there, it's a little different since we did pay cash, and I know it's quite a bit of money to tie up in a deal, but I believe we could refinance later on if we wanted to do a cash out refi and use money somewhere else. But I like the numbers on this one. So it's rented for $11.50. Once we deduct the here we don't have a mortgage to deduct, so we're taking out money for taxes and insurance and expenses. And when we do all that, that includes property management. When we do all that, it leaves us a positive cash flow per month of $627, which again, if we multiply that times 12 and divide it by the $70,000 that we're all in for, it gives us a cash on cash return just over 10%. And again, since we have reserves for the property, I don't necessarily think we need to save 15%. And I think we can add that back into our cash on cash return, our positive cash flow. When we do that, it was $172 a month for expenses. So if I add that to the $627, we end up at $800 a month cash flow. Now, if we divide that, multiply that times 12, and then divide it by the $70,000 that we paid for in cash, that comes out to almost a 14% return. So I would love to hear your opinions on whether or not these are base hits or not, or maybe they're better than a base hit. But I'd love to hear your feedback, and maybe we can make a video once we see some comments from you all out there. As we've moved along in this process of acquiring properties, I think things are getting better and better with each property that we acquire. There were a couple of minor challenges with these last two. On the Gary property, there was the fact that the turnkey provider had said once we took over the property, they felt that it could rent for $12.50 a month. We had it set at $12.50 a month for 4 weeks and got no interest. We spoke with them and decided to lower it to $11.95, and after about 2 weeks, we had a tenant. And since then, everything's been running really smoothly. The other property, the St. Louis property, everything went really smooth with that one. And that property had the Section 8 tenant in place that wanted to stay. We were transitioning from the existing property management company to the people that we were wanting to work with. And that transition took a while to get things to where the rent checks were coming to us. For a while, they were going to the old property manager, and it took a while for them to send the money to our new property management company, and until we actually saw some rent checks being deposited into our account. But other than that, things have been running really smoothly, and it makes me feel happy to know that things can work like we hoped they would. And so we've just been having that money deposited into our accounts, saving up for the next purchase. And I think in that market, I like the St. Louis market that we're in. I love the agent that we're working with and really love the property manager. So we're going to be looking for a couple more single families there. And after that, we'll probably slow down a little bit, build up some reserves and some more savings for the next purchase. And I think we're going to be looking for 2 to 4 unit building after we close on 2 more singles. So we'll look forward to sharing those with you also. Thanks. We'll talk to you in a bit.